Hi, good morning and good evening, wherever you are. Yeah, so I'm going to take us on a whistle-stop journey for half an hour on understanding and building highly adaptable workforces. So to give you an idea of what we're going to be covering is two parts. So the first part is some information what actually is adaptability, and this term AQ. Some of you might have heard of it before. You certainly will have heard of IQ, I should think, and EQ in terms of emotional intelligence, and AQ, adaptability quotient as well. So why it matters, how together we can build highly adaptable workforces, and then share our model of AQ and some actions that you can take today in order to start building your highly adaptable workforces. So I'm going to dive straight in. And the first thing is, let's get a bit of interaction going. You can just comment this in the LinkedIn Live there. And really, I just want to get a sense of how prepared you're currently feeling in terms of your people, your teams, your whole workforce for, say, the next 2 to 3 years ahead. I know we've just taken this massive shift in the last 2 months, but how confident and how prepared do you feel you are as an organization? Not very. We'll get through it. Highly prepared, extremely prepared. Where are you in that kind of sense on a time span of 2 to 3 years, which I'm sure 2 to 3 years at the beginning of the year might have looked very different to how you're looking at it now. So I'll just let you take a bit of thought around that kind of question and that area for us. So I know there's a slight delay coming through on pieces. So I'm going to take us through to the next bit, and I'll perhaps come back to some of those areas. It couldn't be more true than Marshall Goldsmith's book about what got us here won't get us there. The changes ahead are going to be very, very different. And this was even before COVID. We've got exponential technologies poised to disrupt every sector and every industry across every organization. So I think what myself and our team, my co-founder, what we like to look at and talk about is the fundamental operating system for change. Whilst change has been consistent, it's always there. What has changed is the speed. So now we're in an exponential pace. So the type of operating system that we need to navigate that successfully is going to be really fundamentally different. And so onto the next kind of interactive piece here, and a few of I see the delay now because we're starting to get some not very prepared, some of these senses of people from that earlier piece. But I wanted to get an understanding and just a baseline of what people see as adaptability. What does it mean to you? Perhaps 2 or 3 words in the comments so that we can get a sense of just your current feeling of what adaptability actually means.
Hi, Sarah. This is Enrique Rubio. How are you? I'm doing well, thank you. And I wanted to ask you, do you have a couple of minutes to ask you some questions about the email of the deposit, the security deposit?
Okay, so I can hear a little bit of it in the back. I'm not sure if that comes through to everybody or it's just
one-time payment.
I'm going to try and carry on. So adaptability,
we have to pay renter's insurance on top of that, right?
Preparation for a quick change. Yeah, that's a really
these $250 going to cover the.
So I think what I'm going to do is share 2 pieces here. One is adaptability. So as a disposition and skill, and essential to an individual's psychological health, and we heard a lot about psychological safety in the previous workshop, but also the social success and academic or workplace environment as well. So it covers all aspects. Yeah, Enrique, I could hear you as well.
And the other one is the $750 fully refundable, right?
Enrique.
And okay. So I just don't understand why would it go, I mean, other than the fact that I would have to give, to
I'm going to see if I can mute Enrique. I'm not sure if I can.
For the, for the, give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Enrique, can you mute yourself? There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. So in terms of AQ and adaptability quotient, this is a metric of our adaptability in terms of measuring 3 areas: our abilities, our characteristics, and environmental factors which impact the successful behaviors and actions that people and organizations to effectively respond to uncertainty, new information, and changed circumstances. So this is a really important distinction in terms of adaptability as a term, and then AQ as a metric of adaptability and what that covers. And it couldn't be more important right now in terms of uncertainty. We're getting new information. The circumstances for almost everyone on the planet is changing. So why is adaptability, and more importantly, AQ, why does this really matter? Now, you've probably seen a number of these kind of statistics and things before about predicting what's likely to happen in the future 10 years, the amount of jobs that aren't going to exist, the number of people that are going to need to switch occupations. So that's not just upskilling, this is reskilling, and also a huge figure in a cost of actual adaptability in HR and US businesses. So this curve of technology driving change, also things like pandemics can drive massive change, and how quickly can we as humans adapt to those uncertain new environments and the requirements. So this is about displacement. This is also about how we transform and augment the future of work, or in fact work as it is right now. What's the cost of failing to adapt? One of the most favorite things, adapt or die. We actually prefer adapt and thrive. So if you are adapting, there is an opportunity to thrive. We're facing massive disruption. Unemployment rates are going to probably top their 1934 all-time high, maybe up to 30% in the US. So there are millions of jobs being displaced. It costs, yes, financial impact, performance impact for those organizations and individuals, fuels mental health challenges, stress, anxiety, and fundamentally, this will lead to companies collapsing. And that's a real significant danger. And if we can get this right, and we can shift and make sure that we can adapt, that we can leverage our AQ, let's hope, and I believe, that we can save a number of those things from happening. We can save money, we can increase performance, we can actually support health challenges and mental health problems, and we can create jobs for those that are displaced, and perhaps whether that's by technology displacing them or any other factors, so that we can shift companies from dying to surviving and then thriving. In fact, there's been a number of studies around in terms of what skills do we need. In 2017, 2018, a LinkedIn survey study put adaptability at the top as the number one skill that employers were looking for. And before COVID, I think the latest study of that put it certainly, I think it was number 3 or 4, it was in the top 5. But it's going to be right up there for every organization, and it matters more now than ever. So great comment there, in terms of how we adjust our course is really important, that we're doing it intentionally. So it is a radical rethink of how we adapt. How are we going to survive, and how are we going to thrive? We're going to need a workforce that is more able to navigate change than we've ever seen before. When we mean workforce, this is new recruits, this is your teams, this is your collaboration partners, your suppliers, even your clients, and might need to adapt in the way in which they interact with you. So these skills of adaptability are going to be the most essential skill for us to thrive in the future. How do we start to build these adaptable workforces in organizations? Well, like many things, you will be doing lots of stuff already. You'll have initiatives, you'll have part of your culture, and in effect, a status quo that might have elements of change management happening. You'll have innovation programs, whether they're disruptive ones, Horizon 3 kind of imaginary level, or they're just about being more efficient, more productive. You'll have leadership and development programs going on, no doubt, digital transformation. How do you find high potential talent? How do you develop them? All of these things already are happening. But now what we need to do is put a layer beneath that to understand the data that will make these successful. So it's the shift from what you were doing before, and now as leaders, whether that's you leading yourself or you're in a leadership role, is how can you make sure that you're adapting both the programs, your behaviors, and your actions to make these kinds of initiatives and the culture that you've built up shift from what was perhaps holding you back, then it was helping you grow, and now it's holding you back again, and you need to shift and change in order to survive and grow in the future. And Peter Drucker said it very well: if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So if adaptability is one of the key, most fundamental things for our future success, and we're not able to measure it, we've got a serious challenge ahead. And that's what we found when we started looking into this deeper a number of years ago. There was no real sense of how do I measure adaptability of an individual or teams or organizations, let alone then how do I improve it. So what we wanted to then look at is to start with getting a baseline, getting that measurement. And there's 3 critical questions here. And this is: who adapts and why? How and to what degree does someone adapt? And when does someone adapt? So do they adapt because of compliance, because of an external situation, because of fear, because of a potential gain, because they have certain abilities, certain characteristics? All of these complexities we wanted to start to understand and build a model that was replicable and one that we could then move forward with for teams and organizations to build highly adaptable workforces. So I'm going to take you through what we have developed, which is the Adaptiotic table. So you've back to your science days of the periodic table. We've created the Adaptiotic table. And this is fundamentally how we are going to transform the way people and organizations adapt to these exponential changes. And it comes under the framework of ACE: ability, character, and environment. So if you remember those 3 questions before, how and to what degree do I adapt? Those are your abilities. So these are factors like dimensions of grit, mental flexibility, mindset, resilience, and unlearning. Your character, so this is who adapts and why. And our environment: when does someone adapt and to what degree? So these are different dimensions that are often forgotten about in a lot of assessments. Personality, DISC, Myers-Briggs, all of these different data points, many of them aren't taking account that perhaps you are different in different environments and that things shift. Both your character can shift in different environments and your abilities shift in different environments. So your ability to be more resilient, we know there's from all of our data and research, a direct correlation between team support and levels of work stress and resilience, for example. So all of these interrelations between each of these dimensions, we put through our algorithms and machine learning and AI to be able to give a profile and index scoring. And then more interestingly, some predictive optimization. So we're looking at what change readiness index and reskill index is. So to take us through those in a little more, we mentioned and we started with ability. So this is grit. So grit is about passion and perseverance over the long term. So are you committed to an overarching goal? You know, it could be a massive transformational purpose. It could be a whole set of, you know, what am I aiming for? What is my life's work? And having grit against that is a key measure to your success of in achieving, whether it's in a social environment or a work environment. Having resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks. So how quickly can you regain to normal, or even better, to regain to a forward position from something that didn't go well? So building up our resilience is closely linked to experimentation, is closely linked to psychological safety, as the previous workshop was talking about, team support, things like that. But it's also linked to our mindset and our mental flexibility. So can we hold 2 opposing thoughts at the same time? Opposing thoughts could be in the routes to doing something, the how, and not go potty. And unlearning as a term, this is where perhaps a process or a behavior or an action previously has been fine, has served you well, has got the results you wanted. But now, because of another factor of change, it could be through competition, an environmental change, a new technology, that you have to stop something that previously delivered results. It's easy if it stops delivering results to unlearn it. What's hard is when it is still seducing you with a level of results that is just okay or average or good, because that's the enemy of you being able to transform into an even better opportunity that you need to adapt for. So that unlearning, Barry O'Reilly, great book called Unlearn, is, what do you stop doing to get those breakthroughs? The next piece in terms of character, who adapts and why. Now, there are a lot of surveys, a lot of assessments all around our character and personality. A good friend of ours is Ben Hardy, and he has an up-and-coming book that I think will transform the whole industry's understanding of personality profiles. And this is around personality isn't permanent. For us, these 5 factors are critical to adaptability and business outcomes of success. So our level of hope, in order to adapt, you have to have hope, a view that there is a future. Motivation style is a really interesting one, particularly how this relates to communicating a change. So if you can understand at an individual level, are they motivated to change by security, i.e. playing not to lose, or are they motivated by a gain, playing to win? If you trigger the way in which they're motivated to change through your messaging, you will find an increased outcome and engagement and level of, instead of just compliance, proactive engagement to being intentional to drive that change forward. Often the immune system, individually or as a company, comes up is because of a disconnect between the hope and vision that they see of the future and the way in which that is going to be executed. So engaging into the thinking style and motivation style that underpins the character of why people adapt is a absolute brilliant piece of data and insight for you to use in order to adapt and thrive in the future. And the final piece here about environment. So the environment that you have around you. So this could be the wake of the people you spend the most time with. Are you spending time with people that celebrate failures or put on stress? Do they support you when you're trying experimentation of new technologies or new systems? Is your emotional health in a place where you're able to then do things that you haven't done before? Have you done firsts? When was the last time you did something for the first time? Those are key things and key muscles that we can work and cultivate to build our AQ. And from all of this, we can start to then predict our reskill index and our change readiness. So this comes to a lot of the fundamentals of why we believe the assessment that we're building and the platform and framework to build highly adaptable workforce is really important, because it shifts from the what happened and why did it happen kind of data into a what will happen when, and more importantly, how can we make that happen? So we can build these models through machine learning and AI integration so that we can get a personalized level of interventions, of coaching and training, that we know what is likely to happen, because we can understand at an individual basis what will ensure that that adaptation is done and becomes sustainable, and even better, becomes a muscle that whatever you face, whatever change or situation, you can thrive through that. And those are characteristics that are going to mean the difference between organizational failure and organizational success. The same of the difference between individual failure and individual success. So where this comes into play about adaptability, it's not just in the recruitment and development and leadership and hiring in terms of where a lot of assessment pieces are done, but also in the transformation and change. So executive readiness, restructuring, innovation, mergers and acquisitions, and so that we can essentially build frictionless transformation for reskilling, so that from the platform base, we're able to personalize coaching at scale. And that comes on to perhaps some latter points in the presentation. So step 2, after you've got your measurement baseline, and I'll show you some of the assessment and some of the unique ways that we do this, because a lot of assessment fatigue and survey fatigue is in the industry, which is why we've done this in a fundamentally different way. So I'm coming into the final kind of 5 to 10 minutes of this. So step 2, get personal and act fast. So from those data points, you can begin to align communications and messaging to individual motivators and styles, as I discussed. You can engage with the learning and language of AQ. So having that framework and individual reports and team reports about resilience, about mindset, about learning style and unlearning, about team support, you can start those conversations using true data insights, not just opinion. One of the most important things that has come out from a number of our surveys, we've actually done one with over 100 Hacking HR members, and there is a benchmark report that we're publishing in the next day or two. The most important area that is seeming to pop up at the moment is resilience and an experimental mindset. So I wanted to just give you a few tips that you can look at to cultivate resilience and an experimental mindset to drive adaptable behavior and drive adaptable workforces. So in doing this, there's a framework that a good friend of mine, Dan Sullivan at Strategic Coach, which is called the 4 C's. And it's commit to something. So your commitment, courage in order to do it. You then gain the capability and then the confidence. And so it goes round and round in that way. If you start off with just what you have the capability to do, you don't need any courage, and the level of commitment is lower, and the likelihood of you growing is very small. So what I want us to look at is just some 4 easy ways we can start to build higher resilience and a more experimental mindset. So breaking that status quo, the way you've always done things. COVID's come along and broken the way that many people have done things, from meetings to now being virtual, from events being physical to virtual. But what I want you to think about is identifying what's no longer working or serving you. So as individuals on your daily or weekly tasks and basis, as teams and as an organization, what are the top 5 things that are no longer working? And this now starts to form your stop doing list. And I want you then to commit to a few of them as a team. They could be processes, they could be behaviors, they could even be propositions that are no longer working. And then I want the courage once a week to share a story with the team where you stopped doing something from your list. And that was because you decided to, not because the environment told you you were no longer allowed to. So there's a key difference here. COVID and the lockdowns have told us externally an environmental factor in change. I want you to find and identify things that you are going to say, I'm no longer going to do that anymore. It's not serving us, this proposition, that particular client, this action, this behavior. And then share stories on a once a week basis to build that courage. The new capabilities next, identify 2 or 3 new technologies, processes, behaviors, software, and run little rapid experimentations. Start small. So if you can't action this within 48 hours, look for something else, because I want you to build and layer this ability to run rapid experimentations. So each 48 hours, what am I going to do? What little thing that my team is looking at that we can see, is this gaining us some traction? And then the confidence once a week to share a positive story from that experiment that you took and why you selected it and what your next action is. So that simple framework of the 4 C's and looking at what you're going to unlearn. What are you going to stop doing? This next piece here, there'll be a link to it on our landing page, and it just takes you through how our experience is different. The assessment's done in a half an hour conversation in a chatbot. So the level of engagement is very, very different to your normal surveys. We're able to get a level of authenticity and depth in the data that hasn't been replicable in normal surveys. To get an individualized report with some predictive, actionable insights from there. These things that you can now do together with us, you can start identifying high adapters to secure your future. You can look at your adaptable leadership and how do you develop them, and look at who needs support, who's struggling to adapt, what is their stressors, and how can you put interventions and things in place to start to support them through that change and adaptation. Even if that's how do they perform when they're now also trying to homeschool? What kind of support to build the resilience? What kind of experiments can they do in order to be productive in those kinds of environments? So these sorts of areas to start to look at how we use our adaptability muscles, how it feeds into innovations, and how we can use it to reduce workplace stress and overwhelm is fundamentally important. So I want to ask another question here. And this was very similar to the one at the beginning. How prepared for the future could your people be? Could your teams be your workforce if you focused and helped and supported and developed their AQ? So whatever future challenge we face, if they've built the resilience, if they've built the levels of hope, team support, mindset, flexibility, all of those areas, if they have those skills, if they have the framework and coaching and training to improve that, and you have a baseline data point, how confident would you be for the next 2 to 3 years ahead, no matter what it faced? Not very? About the same? Or do you think you might be more confident about the future that you're facing? So I'm coming to the final few minutes. Extremely, thank you. This is the right answer, Cora. We are preparing. It will be live probably tomorrow. You may get an early look at it, but the landing page that we're putting up on aqai.io, HHR. So you'll be able to apply for some of our early access programs. Some of these are complimentary for your individual AQ assessment, then up to a certain level of team members. If you then want to start going into some of the team reports, some of the interventions, and working with our team to consult through the training programs and how to improve it, there are some base points in the assessment, and then engaging with our workforce and our teams to help you go the next level. We've got a range of different packages for that. We're also super excited to be sharing the benchmark index report for the Hacking HR community. And if you want a copy of this workshop deck, then also please go on to the Hacking HR landing page. So thank you. There are a couple of other things coming up soon, which is a book launching at Q3, Decoding AQ, and also AQ podcast, where we're talking about all of the secrets to mastering your bigger future and how to build adaptable leaders, individuals, teams, and organizations. So thank you very much for letting me take you through understanding adaptability in your AQ, a few little tips about how to improve them, and fundamentally our model of validated assessments to be able to build from a data baseline to build a future for your organization where you're thriving and not just surviving, or even worse, dying. So thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to any of you soon. My email is there.